Hey guys, welcome to today's lesson for Monday, August 17th for Math 1. Today's lesson is about distributive property, right? So last week we worked on fraction operations, and now we're going to work on distributive property, and we're actually going to work in some fractions because we use fractions and the distributive property a lot in Math 1 with linear functions. You need your notebook, pens, highlighters. What you're going to do right now during this video is take notes along with me while watching the video, and then you're going to upload a picture of your notes to the Google Classroom using the Cam Scanner app. Okay, you will have an assignment that goes with this distributive property lesson that is due Friday. The notes you take right now are due today, Monday, August 17th. That's your attendance and participation grade for today. The assignment you have all week to work on and is due Friday. So if you need help, we have the Zoom class on Tuesday, which you're required to attend. I'm going to do a couple of review problems, maybe do a whiteboard problem with you to see if you understand and I can see who might need my help. Wednesday, we're going to do in-person tutoring if you want to sign up. By then, you should know whether you get it or not. Thursday, if you couldn't come for in-person tutoring, I'm going to do individual and small group help. If I need to go over more examples or help you with things, I can answer questions, I can do that. Friday, your assignment's due, okay? Also, you have attendance assignments those other days. We're going to have the same types of assignments every week. Tuesday, everybody attends class. Wednesday, you have a puzzle. Thursday, you have an error analysis problem that you need to do, and those are your attendance for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, okay? All right, so let's get to it. So this is just your little overview. We've already created a table of contents, so you need to update that. So if you need to pause the video, grab your notebook and get everything organized now, then do that. But add page 2, distributive property, to your table of contents. Okay, I already have a few things here for you. Page 2, distributive property, I have titled my page and drawn the little silliness up here at the top for you. This dude says he's giving some for you and some for you. He is distributing what he has, right? He's giving some to each person in equal measure. Okay, so we're going to first remember some basics about distributing, and these are so basic problems, right? Distributing means the way it looks is always a number outside of something in parentheses. Now, usually when we're distributing, there's more in parentheses than these first few problems, but these are just little reminders so we can get started, okay? This is 4 parentheses x, actually means 4 times x, right? And this little arrow, a lot of people do this to help us remember we're distributing, so the arrows connect the multiplications that we have to do. 4 times x is just 4x, because the x really has a 1 in front, so we multiply 4 times 1 is 4. X can't multiply because we don't know what it is, so it just sticks, right? So 2 parentheses 3x is really 2 times 3x. We multiply the number parts, 2 times 3, and that is 6. The x just stays tacked on to that, right? So 2 parentheses 3x is 2 times 3x is 6x. Now, this is a confusing point for some people, but a negative parentheses 5x is really a negative 1 multiplied by 5x. So we do the multiplication, negative 1 times 5, and that would be negative 5, and the x is attached to it. Okay, so we're going to review right quick the rules for multiplying integers so that you can just have a little refresher at the beginning of the year here. Right, so when you have to multiply negative and positive numbers, I want you to pause the video and get this copied down. You can copy the whole rest of what's on this page and then come back to me and we'll talk it through. Okay, so this is just a reminder that when we have positive times a positive, we get a positive answer. A negative times a negative gives a positive answer, right? So we often will say same signs, positive answer for multiplication. Also, when we are multiplying, we can have a positive times a negative, and that equals a negative. A negative times a positive equals a negative. So we say different signs, one of each, gives us a negative answer, right? That we need to have it written here. It really still is one of the biggest mistakes people make. And if you have it written and you can just glance back at it when you're like, uh-oh, and then you make sure, right? Now, down here I've just written a little blank for how distributing works. There's no numbers to emphasize the importance of the connections, right? The number out front multiplies by this first number to give you the first part of your distributed answer. The number out front, and I'm going to highlight it in green too, this is one number, also gets multiplied by the second term to give the second part of the answer, right? And it's a little more complicated than that because you have to consider the signs, right? This answer down here is going to be either positive or negative based on the multiplication. And the sign right here is the symbol, the plus or minus symbol, is the sign that goes with this second number, right? The operation that you put there is the sign of the second number. This is really important, and a lot of people have some trouble with it. And a lot of people also try to just bring the plus down, and then they do some kind of math up here, and then they have another sign, so it might say plus negative, or it might say minus negative, right, or some combination. But we don't want that. In algebra, we always want one operation right here in the center. We don't want plus negative or minus negative. We just want a plus or a minus and a positive number there, right? And the way we get that is by saying, is this number times this number positive or negative? And whatever that is, the plus or minus goes right there. The positive or negative becomes the plus or minus for the problem. Okay, so we're going to do some examples. If you want to copy down the first two examples, let me zoom so you can see those. We're just going to put those side by side. Then start the video back. Oh God, I'm making it worse. Okay, so I'm going to use my colors again for the connections, right? So we're doing a multiplication of 2 times 3x and a multiplication of 2 times positive 5. Do you see how I thought of the plus here as the positive that goes with the 5 for my multiplication, right? So when we do this first multiplication, we need, this one is all positives because I wanted to just focus on the multiplication here, right? 2 times 3 is 6, so this one has an x, so it is 6x. Positive 2 times positive 5, it's just 2 times 5 is 10. It's positive, so we put a plus in between and the 10. Okay, so we got 6x was the answer to our first distribution, and positive 10 was the answer to our second distribution. Okay, the same thing is going to happen over here. We have a negative number, and we're going to think here. Really, the first thing I do is think the sign. I do the sign and then the number. Negative times positive is going to be negative. Negative times positive is going to be a negative answer. Okay, so I put my negative there. Now I do 5 times 4 is 20. I don't have to say negative 5 times positive 4, right? I think through the sign separate from the number, and then that way I can just kind of keep moving across, right? So that was my first connection, gives me negative 20. My second connection or distribution is negative 5 times positive 6x, right? And see how I'm thinking of the plus as the positive that goes with. Okay, so this one is a negative times positive. Negative times a positive equals a negative from our little chart. So since this is a negative, I'm not going to put a plus down here. I'm going to put a minus, right? And then I'm just going to say 5 times 6 is 30, and the x attaches. It doesn't matter that the x comes second in the distribution, whereas over here it came first in the distribution. That doesn't matter, okay? It just matters that you keep it attached where it's supposed to be attached. Pause if you need to copy. Okay, our next two examples, I've just thrown in some more negative stuff here for us to think about. Grr. Okay, so we have our first connection, negative times positive equals a negative. 2 times 9 is 18, so that's negative 18, and the x is attached here. Our next connection is the negative 2 times negative 8, so that's negative times negative will equal a positive. So since this equals a positive, our symbol here becomes a plus for the answer instead of just bringing that down, right? So don't bring that down. Consider the sign of the answer, and the sign of the answer goes here. Now I don't have to worry about the negatives. I just say 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, so positive 16 was the answer to my second distribution. Negative 18x was the answer to my first distribution, right? Negative 3 times negative 4x is our first connection. Negative 3 times negative 7 is our second connection. So let's think it through. Negative times a negative for this first connection will give us a positive answer because they're the same. So do I have to write a plus here? I can. It will not make it wrong. Most of the time, positive numbers don't have a positive in front unless the positive is the operation like that one. Okay, so 3 times 4 is 12, and the x will attach. Now we have negative 3 times negative 7 for the green connection. So a negative times a negative will equal a positive answer. Since this is positive, I put a plus there. And now I do 3 times 7 is 21. Okay, so I got my first connection was negative 3 times negative 4x, and I got positive 12x. The second connection was negative 3 times negative 7, and I got positive 21 for that, right? So when I highlight them, you can see it's really just two answers that are positive or negative, but when they're put together, the positive or negative of the second number becomes a plus or minus in an expression, a mathematical equation, right? Okay, so I'd love it if you could write out your homework with these little reminders up front, because that's how you're going to make sure you remember, right? And we got to make sure up front that we're all on the same page, because things get difficult, and it's really a lot of times the basic things that trip people up. I can help you understand the hard parts of math that we're going to do this year, but if you don't have a strong base, like you can get the signs of things right when you multiply them, you're going to struggle. So we want to make sure now that we're all kind of together on that. So pause if you need to, but I'm going to keep going. Let me get this whole page in case you want to pause and make sure you got everything. Okay, now that you've got everything, we're going to move on to a little bit more of a difficult part, and it's really not hard. We are going to distribute fractions. Fractions are not scary, don't panic. Okay. If you would like to pause right quick and get this stuff copied down, then we'll walk it through. So when you're distributing a fraction, fractions can be anywhere in this, like a problem like this one. You could have a fraction with the x, you could have a fraction where the 3 is, but most of the time with linear functions, the biggest thing that we need to be solid on is when we have a fraction out front here, because the slope of a line is always a fraction. It's the rise over the run, right? The up number over the left to right number. And so it's always a fraction. Like sometimes it comes out to be a whole number, sure. Okay, but most of the time slope is a fraction, and we need to be able to work with slopes and distribute them. Okay, so the big thing here is we reviewed this when we did fraction operations because we knew it was coming now. When you're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, here's what it looks like. Here's your fraction, here's your whole number. And what we need to remember is that the numerator multiplies by the whole number to give you the numerator. Numerator times the whole number gives you the numerator. The denominator isn't going to change. It's going to stay the same. Because when we have these multiplications, each time we do the connections for our distribution, we're multiplying a fraction times a whole number. A fraction times a whole number, right? So it's going to be easy that way. Okay, what we're going to do is, let's zoom in a little, and we're going to multiply this first one out. 1/2 times x, right, is really 1/2 times 1. Right, so we're going to treat it like we did up here, first of all. Okay, this first example is all positive numbers so that we don't really have to worry about the signs. We're going to get positives because we have all positive numbers. So we do numerator times whole number is the new numerator. 1 times 1 is 1. The denominator stays the same. And x attaches, just like it was doing before. Now that was our first connection. Now we're going to do our second connection. 1/2 times 3. 1/2 times 3 is our problem, just like the little example above. So we're going to multiply the numerator times the whole number to get the numerator, and the denominator will stay the same. Remember, when we have all positive numbers, positive times positive is positive, so we got a plus here. 1 times 3 for the numerator is 3. The denominator stays the same. Boom. So this second connection here gave us positive 3/2. So we got 1/2 x plus 3/2 by breaking these two into these problems, and we have this little blank here where it says the directions for exactly how to use those numbers to come up with your answer, okay? You got to use your pause button because I'm going to keep going. So if you need to copy, you just hit pause. 3/4 times 2x plus 5. We're going to make those connections, right? And we're still working all positive. But if you want to do the little thing where you write it down, you just say positive times positive equals positive, right? That just reminds you. And then you say 3/4 times 2. And now we're going to work that out. The numerator times the whole number gives you the numerator. That would be 3 times 2 is giving me 6. The denominator stays the same. And x attaches to it. Okay, so there's our first connection. For our second connection, 3/4 is going to multiply by 5. That's also a positive 3/4 times a positive 5. Positive times positive is going to equal positive, which leads us to put a plus here. Now we have 3/4 times 5. We're going to multiply the numerator times the whole number. 3 times 5 is 15. That's our new numerator. The denominator stays the same. Boom. Boom, boogity, boogity. Okay, that's our second connection here. Gives us positive 15/4. Now, in this one, we're running into a situation where we can simplify a little. If you remember back to our fractions, we had said we're not really worried about it being improper. We don't care that the top is bigger than the bottom. The only thing we care about is whether the top and the bottom can both be divided by something to make them simpler. 6 and 4 can both be divided by 2, so we can simplify by dividing by 2 here. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, 4 divided by 2 is 2, so the 6/4 x becomes 3/2 x. Can 15 and 4 both be divided by something? Remember, you always look at your smaller number. What will go into 4? 2 will. 2 won't go into 15. 4 will go into 4. 4 won't go into 15. So there's nothing I can do. I'm going to leave that 15/4. Okay? So all we did from here to here is simplify. And since this is my notes, I want to make sure that I understand that's what I did there. We got 2 more examples and then we're done, so this is not a super long lesson. The last 2 examples here, if you want to pause and copy them down. Okay, we got some negatives thrown in so we can make sure we understand how to get that, right? So we have our connections that we're going to make, our first connection for the distribution, and the first thing I do is consider the sign. Negative times a positive. So I'm going to write that. Negative times a positive. What does that give me? If I have to look back, then I have to look back. You have to look back until you know every time you're getting it right. Negative times positive should be a negative answer. So I'm going to go ahead and put a negative, right? Because then I don't worry about the sign anymore. Now I'm going to do 2/3 times 5. So that is my fraction times my whole number. And I do the numerator times the whole number. 2 times 5 is 10. And the denominator stays the same. 10/3. And then the x attaches to this one. So my first connection here gives me negative 10/3. And now I need to do the second connection for distribution. And the first thing I do is consider the sign. Negative times a negative. Negative times a negative. And if I have to look back, but if I can remember this, same signs, positive answer. So these are the same, so it should be positive. Different signs are negative, so those over there were different. Okay. So I've got a positive answer coming, so I put a plus as my operation, and then I don't have to worry about the signs anymore. I just do 2/3 times 3 as my fraction times the whole number. Numerator times the whole number is the new numerator, 6, and 3 stays the same on the bottom. So you got to just practice thinking everything through the same exact way every time and not get ahead of yourself. So now, can I simplify? 10/3. 3 is the only number that goes into 3. Will 3 go into 10? No. 3 is the only number that will go into 3. Will 3 go into 6? Yes. 3 will go into 3 and 3 will go into 6. So we can simplify this second one by dividing them both by 3. So the first one we don't change, negative 10/3 x. Plus we don't change. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Do I need to put the 1? If you put 2 over 1, you're not wrong, but it's better to leave off the over 1 because when it's over 1, it's a whole number. So just put plus 2 and you're good. Last one, last one. So we're going to get our first connection and distribute 4/5 times negative 3x. We do consider your sign. Positive times a negative. Different signs should give you a negative answer. So I'm going to go ahead and put my negative. And now I don't have to worry about the sign at all. I'm just going to multiply 4/5 times 3. Numerator times the whole number. 4 times 3 is 12. That's my new numerator. The denominator stays the same, so that's 5. X attaches to it. Are you getting the hang? Are you remembering what we're doing? Second distribution is 4/5 times positive 2. So I'm going to consider the sign first. Positive times positive is a positive answer. So I put a plus here because of that. And now I'm going to do my multiplication, not worrying about the signs. I got 4/5 times 2. Numerator times the whole number. 4 times 2 is 8. And denominator stays the same. Now I'm going to see if I can simplify either one of these. 5 is the only number that goes into 5. Will 5 go into 12? No. 5 is the only number that goes into 5. Will 5 go into 8? No. So that means this is the answer. Okay, so your Homework assignment has exactly the same name as this, distributive property. It just says distributive property assignment. It's a separate assignment on Google Classroom because it's not due till Friday. For today, you need to flip back through here and use Cam Scanner to take a copy of your notes, take a picture, okay, and upload that under this assignment where it says distributive property video and notes. You'll upload that. That's your attendance for Monday today, and it's also a participation grade. Okay, and the participation grade comes from how good your notes are. Are you using highlighters and stuff to show the importance and the connections like I am? That's what I'm wanting you to do if you want 100. Okay, if you just do it and it's sloppy or it's all in pencil or it's not very good, you can get a 50 or a 75 or even a 0 like if you don't do it. Okay, so if you don't know how to use Cam Scanner, if you open it and you can't figure it out, all you got to do is send me a text. Send me a screenshot of where you're stuck. Like, I don't know what to click here. Text me a screenshot and I'll tell you what to do. It's different on iPhone and Android. So some people have been having trouble with iPhone because the instructions are not exactly the same. So just text me, okay? Thanks, guys. Let me know if you have questions.